That is just like rocking on this morning. I just like to start off by saying I just love you guys. So, and thank you so much for your conscious leadership. Well, it's crazy to think that we're almost halfway through this conference right now. So if you reflect on some of your key takeaways to this point, or for that matter, how you learn when facing any challenges in your business or your life, what do you think are the keys to an optimal mindset that will help you grow and thrive to make an even bigger difference in the lives of all of those who you serve? And so what I'd like to share with you this morning is 4 steps to catalyze your growth as a conscious leader, and a brief little story about how I discovered this. So I found my purpose about 25 years ago, which is to help leaders fundamentally know how to navigate stress and focus on what matters most after I completely fell apart with stress, overwhelm, uncertainty, self-doubt that spiraled me into burnout and a depression when I went through my medical training at Ucsf. And I remember at the time going to see my counselor. And I said to my counselor, I feel like such a loser going through this, like I'm the only person going through this. And my counselor said to me, well, don't you know that more than half your class is in counseling right now? And none of us knew that. In high-functioning groups, what we tend to do, especially when we're struggling, is we tend to suffer in silence. So I just want to reassure you, if anybody is suffering right now, I promise you, you're not alone. And so what I did was, this idea is that unconsciously we create this culture of isolation. So I was determined to do something about this. And so from one phone call, I essentially signed up the entire medical school, created the UCSF Medical Student Network. We created 25 families. And in each of these families, the 4th years led. There were 3rd years, 2nd years, and 1st years. And then at the age of 26, not knowing what the hell I was doing, I did my first leadership workshop with the 4th year students. And I was passionate. I said, ultimately, if I could inspire the 4th year students to model vulnerability, we could really transform the culture. We could connect more fully with our own suffering, and in connect more fully with our own suffering, facilitate healing for ourselves that actually gives us a greater capacity to heal our patients and really facilitate the compassionate delivery of healthcare. And in that moment, I really found my purpose, which was really, I didn't know anything about conscious capitalism. This is like in the late 1980s, which essentially that for me was conscious leadership leading to conscious culture. Then I was invited to become the first teaching fellow at UCSF. They had a teaching fellowship before, and they said, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to continue this work in leadership and resiliency. I'm determined. And they said, no. You're our first teaching fellow. You're going to have to do something far more academic than that. So my second choice was something that was just emerging in the science at that point, something called evidence-based medicine, which was all about how doctors were learning how to bring science to the bedside. And so I developed a program at UCSF and then landed up writing one of the first textbooks on the topic that has since become the standard of care by which all healthcare providers now make medical decisions. And then I spent the next decade of my life on the road training tens of thousands of healthcare providers how to make better science-based decisions. And some people would have said that I had a very successful career. But to me, after all these years, evidence-based medicine is about the mind of medicine. And I was desperately missing the heart of healthcare and this work over here that was so meaningful. I became painfully disconnected from my purpose, which ironically is helping other people find their purpose. And everything came to a head one night. And I remember this was about a decade ago when I was taking my son Dylan for a walk at Torrey Pines, and I was starting to spiral back into that depression. I was really kind of hitting the low again. And I was putting to bed that night, and I had a mindfulness practice at the time. And I know when you're under stress, there are like 4 things that go through your mind. It's like, what if and all the bad things that could happen, if only in the regrets of our past, or what's wrong with me and what's wrong with other people. And that night, I was like locked down, like, what's wrong with me, what's wrong with me, what's wrong with me? How could I have taken this wayward journey into evidence-based medicine where ironically, I wanted to help people navigate their stress and self-doubt to find their purpose, and I'd lost mine. And then a miracle happened. A miracle happened in this midst of, this contortion of despair. What's wrong with me? Another question popped into my mind. And the question that popped into my mind was, how can I find my way home? And the moment that question hit, I found a place of stillness that if I'd been on drugs or in psychotherapy for a year, I would never have found that place of stillness. And that happened in 15 seconds. And I was like, what the F just happened? Like, what the hell just happened? And then it hit me that all I had done was I asked a better question. Instead of saying, what's wrong with me, I asked, how can I find my way home? And then like a ton of bricks, it hit me that I'd spent the last decade of my life on a process teaching doctors how to make better evidence-based medicine decisions that begins with asking the right question to begin with. It then loops around next where we go about finding the answers in computer databases. We then learn how to evaluate the research using structured study guides, and then we go about applying it in structured decision-making with our patients, and then we loop back around where we frame the next question, is what we're doing working? And then it hit me that this wasn't a wayward journey at all. This was the journey that I was meant to travel, because these 4 steps, as much as they help us navigate science, they also help us navigate uncertainty and serve as the catalyst for inspiration, learning, and growth, which is what I wanted to share with you over here this morning, how these steps serve us. So in step 1, we begin by mindfully asking better questions. From the perspective of brain science, learning and growth is catalyzed by curiosity and the quality of questions that you ask. And so when we ask questions, what's wrong with me, what's wrong with other people, your brain doesn't care. It's just going to strengthen all of those neurocircuits myelinating over in service of that, and that then becomes your neural destiny. On the other hand, if you ask better questions, like in this moment, what is it that I'm going to learn? That activates different neural circuitry, which becomes your new reality. Right? The find piece also leverages neuroscience. We're not looking in computer databases, we're looking within. And it gets into the science of when you feel under stress, how do you still your survival circuits that are dominating? How do you still your survival circuits, taking 3 heart-centered breaths, for example, going out for a run, or whatever brings you to that place of peace and calm? How do you still those circuits, which open up your higher cortical circuits, so the answers to your inspired questions can more readily find you? The evaluate piece is how do you trust your knowing? So much we want to do things that feel good. We want to actually move towards pleasure, move away from pain, right? And if that was the only thing we do, we'd never quit alcohol if it was too much of a problem for us, or we would never confront difficult issues or people when we know we should. So you calibrate around here, does it feel right more than it feels good to anchor to your higher purpose? And then the apply piece is the courage to take action in the stream of your inspiration. And then it loops around asking the next question, which is what we're doing working? Are we truly anchored to our highest source of inspiration and purpose in what we're doing? So these are the steps. So let me ask you, would you like to viscerally experience that same kind of emotional shift I had that night when I was locked down in pain and found emotional freedom? Can we play? All right, right on. So let's just do a very brief mindfulness exercise. So what I'm going to ask you is just to uncross your arms and legs and to arrive in your body, just noticing what's ever there to be noticed. In a moment, I'm going to share something, and I just want you to notice what happens in your body, okay? So what I would like to invite you to do right now is to say, silently in your mind, 3 firm no's, no, 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 much like your parents or your caregivers denied you as a child. And see what that feels like in your body. Okay. Now to contrast that, let that wash away. And now what I'd like to do is to invite you instead to say 3 warm, affirming yeses. Yes. 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 And notice what that feels like in your body. I'm going to invite you to open your eyes. Can you feel a difference? So what does no feel like? It's constricted. It's coming in, hey, David? It's coming in. What does yes feel like? Oh, it's expanding. And you can imagine that your behaviors in each of those physiological states at just a few seconds apart would be dramatically different, right? So how do you explain all of this? So the best way that I came across to really understand all of this is explaining it through chaos theory. Now, chaos theory is not a theory of chaos. It's a theory of organization, popularized by Edward Lorenz, who said, when a butterfly flaps its wings in Brazil, it ripples through a complex weather system, resulting in a tornado in Texas, right? Well, the most complex system known to humankind is not the weather system. It's the human brain. It has 85 billion neurons, each of which make 5 to 10,000 connections. The combination of connections is theoretically 10 to the power of a million. To put that in context, there are only 10 to the power of 18 atoms in the known observable universe. So the complexity in our brain outstrips anything that we know. And so what you just experienced over here was an organizing activator, much like the butterfly flapping its wings. When you said no, it was rippling through your neural system, recruiting all of those neural networks in the service of no, resulting in the output and behavior of no, right? When you said yes, recruiting different networks, resulting in the output experience of yes. The most powerful activators we have are the quality of questions that we ask. So when we ask, what's wrong with me, what's wrong with others, like I did that night, again, your brain doesn't care. It's rippling and recruiting all of those networks, and it's giving me great answers about what's wrong with me, right? But when we begin to ask better questions like, what is it that I'm here to learn? How can we better connect? You know, like what Corey did, how are we connecting here early on? How can we better express ourselves? What's our highest purpose and service? It recruits different networks, creating a different reality. And the coolest thing of all is when we do that collectively, as a group, when we ask collectively, what is our highest purpose and service? And we think, how do we engage all of our stakeholders in transforming culture? We can literally change the world together. And so, right on, right on. And so what I really, hope you do the rest of this conference and your life beyond is to stay insatiably curious. To stay insatiably curious. For the rest of the programs that you listen to today, getting below the realm of what sometimes can be our dismissive judgment, staying in that place of curiosity and say, what is it that I'm here to learn? What's relevant and how can I apply it? And then when we're stuck for questions, I can tell you one of the best questions to ask is, what is the best question I can ask? All right. So with that, I just want to really hope you have really an inspired rest of the conference, and I wish you much joy in your learning, growth, and connecting on your journey of conscious leadership. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much.